the chains beneath the sun. They said no man was born a slave in Oduma, that even the weakest carried the breath of the gods. But when I first saw Cato, he was chained to the back of a cart, dust covering his face, blood drying on his shoulders. He was no longer a man, he was a shadow. The guards dragged him through the market square, his feet scraping the red soil. Children stopped playing, women froze mid-trade, and old men shook their heads. No one dared speak. The royal guards had orders from the queen herself: break the new slave before sunset. Cato was thrown into the palace courtyard. The stones burned hot beneath him. The king's son, Prince Azu, watched from the balcony, sipping palm wine, his golden cloth brushing against the wind. He laughed when the whip cracked. He laughed when Cato fell. "Make him kneel," the prince said. And when Cato refused, they beat him until his back was a field of fire. But even through pain he did not scream. He only raised his eyes toward the sun, and whispered something no one understood. Later I would learn those words were a promise. That night, as the palace slept, I saw Cato through the barred window of the slave quarters. His hands trembled, his lips moved slowly. He was talking to someone, or something, in the dark. I had lived in the palace long enough to know when a man prayed. But this was different. The air around him felt alive. The shadows near him shifted like they were breathing. A cold wind blew from nowhere, snuffing out the oil lamps. The other slaves stirred in fear, but Cato kept whispering. When light returned, his chains were still there, but his eyes had changed. They were calm. Too calm. Days passed. The prince used him for sport, made him fight other slaves for amusement. Yet Cato never lost. He fought like someone guided by unseen hands. He fought without hatred, without anger, but with precision. Rumors began to spread in the palace. The cooks whispered that the gods were with him. The guards called him cursed. The queen ordered him watched. One evening, as the sun sank behind the walls, Prince Azu approached him with a cruel smile. "You think you are strong, slave?" he said. "You will never be more than dirt under my feet." Cato looked up, sweat and blood running down his face. "Dirt can bury kings," he said softly. The prince struck him across the face. But Cato only smiled, the kind of smile that chills your blood. That night the winds changed in Oduma. The river behind the palace rose higher than it ever had. Dogs howled through the night. And for the first time the royal family dreamed of fire. They did not know it yet. But the slave they mocked would soon become the storm that swallowed them all. The whispers in the dark. That night I couldn't sleep. The rain had begun to fall, soft at first, then hard, beating against the mud walls of the slave quarters. The others slept restlessly, turning in their dreams, but Cato sat alone by the dying embers of the fire, staring into the flames as if searching for something. His face glowed red and gold under the flickering light. I saw his lips move again, whispering those strange words from before. Only this time I heard a whisper reply. At first I thought it was the wind, but no. The voice was deep, ancient, like something speaking from inside the earth itself. Cato didn't flinch. He listened. Then he spoke softly, "I will do as you say." The next morning the palace awoke to strange signs. 3 chickens were found dead in the royal yard, their necks twisted backward. The priest said it was an omen of blood. The queen, frightened, ordered a cleansing ritual. But while the priests poured libations and burned herbs, Cato was scrubbing the palace stones with a calm smile, as though he already knew what was coming. Days passed and the whispers never stopped. Sometimes I would see Cato walking near the river at night, his chains rattling softly. Once I followed him. He knelt by the riverbank, his reflection rippling in the moonlight. He began to chant in a voice that didn't sound like his own. The river seemed to answer, rising and falling like it could hear him. I swear by my ancestors. I saw hands, dark, smoky hands, reach out of the water and touch his feet before disappearing. When he returned to the quarters, his wounds from the whip were gone. He said nothing. Just lay down, eyes open until morning. The next day Prince Azu challenged him again. "Fight, slave!" the prince shouted, throwing him a spear. Cato caught it without looking. They circled each other in the training yard, dust swirling around them. When Azu struck, Cato moved like wind, too fast, too calm. The prince fell to the ground, breathless, humiliated. Everyone went silent. No slave had ever touched the blood of royalty and lived. The queen screamed in rage. "Take him to the pit," she shouted. "Let the earth swallow his pride." They threw Cato into the old pit, the one where disobedient slaves were left to die. For 3 nights no one heard a sound from below. But on the 4th night, the sound came. It wasn't a cry for help. It was a song, a slow, haunting melody that rose from the pit like a spirit calling home. The ground trembled slightly. Birds fled from the trees. And when dawn came, the pit was empty. No body, no bones, no blood, only the broken chains, and a strange mark burned into the earth, the shape of a crown. That was the night Oduma began to change. The cattle stopped eating. The skies darkened before sunset. And every dream I had was filled with fire, and the sound of a man's voice whispering from the shadows. Cato was gone. But I could feel it deep in my bones. He wasn't dead. He was becoming something else. The return of the slave. After Cato vanished, the palace fell into unease. The servants whispered about spirits. The king's dreams grew darker each night. And I could not sleep. Every corner of Oduma felt strange, too quiet, too watchful. The birds stopped singing near the pit. Even the dogs refused to go close. The queen ordered the priests to seal the ground with charms. They sprinkled white chalk and poured palm wine into the soil. But the marks of the crown remained, dark, burned into the earth, like a wound that refused to heal. One evening I went to fetch water by the river. The sun had just set, and the moon floated above like a silver eye watching everything. That's when I saw him. He stood by the water, tall, bare-chested and silent. His back faced me, his skin gleaming under the moonlight. I thought my eyes were deceiving me, so I whispered, "Cato?" He turned slowly, and there he was. The same man they had thrown into the pit. But he was different now. His eyes glowed faintly like burning coals. His chains were gone, replaced by scars that shimmered with strange light. Around his neck hung a necklace made of teeth, human teeth. "Cato," I whispered again, trembling. He smiled. But it wasn't the smile of a man. It was the smile of something that had seen death and come back with secrets. "They thought the earth would eat me," he said softly. "But the earth served me instead." The next morning, the king's youngest son was found dead near the same river. No wound. No blood. Just fear frozen on his face, eyes wide open, staring at nothing. The queen wailed through the night. The palace burned incense. But nothing could hide the smell of fear that filled the air. One by one, strange things began to happen. Goats were born without eyes. The royal crops dried up overnight. And at night, people heard soft singing from the trees, Cato's voice, whispering that same haunting melody from the pit. By the 5th day, even the king began to tremble. He called the priests, the warriors, the seers. But when they entered the courtyard, they saw something on the royal throne. A crown, the king's crown, lying there covered in red soil and feathers. And beside it, a footprint. Bare. Muddy. The same footprint from the pit. The king's voice cracked as he shouted, "Find him. Bring me the slave." But the guards who went searching never returned. One night I heard a sound outside my hut. Heavy footsteps, slow and steady. I opened the door and saw him again. "Cato." He looked at me with those burning eyes. "You were kind to me," he said. "Do not fear. The gods are only taking what was owed." Before I could speak, he was gone, swallowed by the mist that rolled from the forest. The next morning the palace was silent. No drums. No guards. No cries. When I entered, I found the royal family lying cold in their chambers, their faces calm like they had simply fallen asleep. But on the throne sat Cato, dressed in royal robes, his body shining with river water. He held the king's staff in one hand and the queen's crown in the other. The servants knelt, not out of fear but out of something else. Something older. Something they felt in their blood. And when Cato spoke, his voice echoed through every wall of the kingdom. The time of kings has ended. The earth has chosen its own. From that day Oduma was never the same. No slave, no ruler, only one name whispered in every hut, every marketplace, every dream. Cato. The man who died and returned to reign. The slave who became king. The kingdom of shadows. After that night everything changed. Oduma was reborn. The people said the gods had punished the old rulers for their pride. They said Cato was the chosen one, the man who carried the power of both life and death. I was there when they crowned him. It was dawn and mist covered the entire courtyard. The air smelled of wet soil and palm wine. The villagers gathered, kneeling as Cato walked through the fog, barefoot, wearing a simple white cloth around his waist. No drums, no horns. Only silence. The silence of a people who had seen fear become flesh. The oldest priest, trembling, lifted the royal crown. But before he could place it on Cato's head, Cato stopped him. He looked around and said, "No man will crown me. The earth has already done it." Then he lifted a handful of soil from the ground and rubbed it across his forehead. That was the moment Oduma gained a new king, not of blood but of earth. At first the people rejoiced. He gave them back their land, freed the slaves, shared food from the royal stores. He spoke softly, kindly, like a man who had suffered and finally understood. But as the moon turned full, something darker began to grow. The nights in Oduma became longer. Shadows danced on walls where there was no fire. Some villagers claimed they saw faces in the river, faces of the old royal family watching from beneath the water. Still, Cato ruled with strength. He brought peace among villages, made Oduma rich with trade, and built walls stronger than any seen before. Yet, there were whispers. Whispers that every night he walked into the forest alone. That the trees bent when he passed. That sometimes, he wasn't alone when he came back. One night I followed him. It was dangerous, but curiosity burned inside me stronger than fear. He walked deep into the forest where no one dared to go, not even hunters. There, beneath a giant irako tree, he stopped. He began to speak, not in our tongue but in something older, something that felt like thunder whispered through stone. I saw them. Figures moving in the darkness, thin, tall, their bodies glowing faintly like dying embers. They surrounded him, bowing low, and when they raised their heads, I saw faces I recognized. The faces of the dead royals. The king. The queen. Their sons. Their eyes were empty, their mouths moving as if chanting some old curse. And Cato was smiling. He reached out and touched the king's ghostly hand, and the wind screamed through the trees. The earth trembled beneath my feet. I wanted to run, but something held me still, something cold and heavy pressing against my chest. Then Cato spoke again, his voice echoing through the forest. The throne is never free. Every crown drinks blood. If I must rule, the shadows shall rule with me. By the next sunrise I fell sick. Fever burned me for 7 days, and in my dreams I saw Cato's eyes, bright red, watching me. When I finally woke, the village had changed again. The people worshipped him like a god now. They said the rains came when he raised his hands. They said sickness vanished when he spoke a single word. But I knew what he had done. The gods did not bless him. The dead did. And in their blessing was a curse. As months passed, Cato's face grew older, yet his body never changed. He didn't age. He didn't sleep. And sometimes when he spoke, his voice echoed with more than one tone, like a man speaking with the tongues of the dead. People stopped questioning him. They feared him. They worshipped him. And Oduma, our proud kingdom, became the kingdom of shadows. And I, the only one left who knew the truth, could only whisper in the night. What happens when a man kills kings, and becomes the ghost he buried?